Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into one of the most powerful and honestly terrifying callings in all of Scripture. We're going to walk through Isaiah chapter 6, verse by verse, starting at verse 5, to really get a feel for the vision that completely changed a prophet's life and his mission. So let's jump right in at verse 5. Isaiah has just seen the full glory of God on his throne, surrounded by these incredible six-winged angels called seraphim. And even though Isaiah was already a prophet, this experience is on a whole other level. When he sees God's pure, absolute holiness, his first reaction isn't joy or wonder, it's pure, gut-wrenching terror. He cries out, "Woe is me, for I am undone," which basically means he feels completely shattered, silenced by just how sinful he feels in the face of perfection.
And you know, this reaction from Isaiah, it's not a one-off thing. It's actually a pretty consistent theme you see right across the biblical narrative when a human being comes face to face with the divine.
I mean, just look at these other examples. You've got Moses at the burning bush. He literally hides his face because he's terrified to even look. Or Job, after everything he went through, when he finally understands God's majesty, he says he despises himself. And then there's Peter, who, after seeing Jesus' power, just falls on his knees and says, "Go away from me, Lord, I am a sinful man." In every single case, a direct encounter with holiness just instantly exposes their own human unworthiness.
Okay, so Isaiah's at rock bottom here, right? But this moment of total crisis, it's not the end, not by a long shot. In fact, it's the essential starting point for everything that comes next, a painful purification that leads to a brand new, powerful calling. So right after this, in verses 6 and 7, we get this incredible symbolic scene. A seraph, one of those burning ones, flies over, takes a glowing hot coal right from the temple altar, and touches it to Isaiah's lips. Now, you might think this is a punishment, but it's not. It's all about purification. It's an act of spiritual cleansing aimed right at the source of the sin he just confessed, his unclean lips.
And think about it. The focus on the lips is so specific, so deliberate, it really echoes a teaching from Jesus centuries later in Matthew 15, that what truly makes a person unclean isn't what goes into their mouth, but what comes out of it. If Isaiah was going to be God's mouthpiece, the very instrument of his prophecy had to be purified first.
And verse 8 shows us the absolutely stunning result of this. The very second he's declared clean, Isaiah overhears God asking, "Whom shall I send?" This is the same guy who, just moments before, was convinced he was ruined. And now he responds without a single moment of hesitation. "Here I am, send me." His terror is completely transformed into this fearless readiness to serve.
Now, you might have caught something interesting there. God says, "Who will go for us?" So what's that about? Well, this isn't suggesting multiple gods. It's what's known as the plural of majesty. Think of it like a king speaking on behalf of his entire court. It signifies supreme authority. We see the same kind of language back in Genesis 1:26, when God says, "Let us make man in our image."
All right, so Isaiah's all in. He's purified, he's ready to go. But the mission he just volunteered for, it might just be one of the most difficult, most heartbreaking assignments given to any prophet in the entire Bible.
In verse 9, God lays it all out for him. He's told, "Go and preach to this people, but know this. They're going to hear you, but they won't get it. They'll see what you're doing, but they won't perceive the meaning." His job, essentially, is to preach to a people who have already decided to shut their ears and harden their hearts.
And the impact of this one commission, it's huge. It echoes down through the centuries. Hundreds of years later, both Jesus in Matthew 13 and the Apostle Paul in Acts 28 would quote these exact words from Isaiah to describe people in their own time who were willingly blind and deaf to the truth.
So faced with this just impossible-sounding mission, Isaiah asks the only question anyone would ask, right? You see it there in verse 11. "Lord, how long? How long am I supposed to do this? How long will this judgment of spiritual blindness last?" And the answer he gets, it's absolutely devastating. God basically says, this is going to keep happening until the whole nation just collapses, until the cities are empty, the houses are abandoned, and the land is completely desolate. It's a direct prophecy of the coming exiles by the Assyrians, and later the total destruction by Babylon. But right when things seem completely hopeless, at the darkest point of the prophecy, verse 13 throws in this tiny but critical glimmer of hope. It's not all over.
What does he say? He tells Isaiah that even after all of that destruction, a tenth will remain in the land. Just a small group, a remnant, will survive the judgment and will ultimately return.
And to explain this idea, the verse gives us this amazing metaphor, a tale tree or terebinth tree. See, when you chop this tree down, it looks dead, right? Its leaves are gone. But the real life, its substance, is still down there in the stump, totally ready to sprout again. The nation's going to be cut down just like that, but it won't be completely wiped out.
And this brings us to the most important phrase in the verse. That life force, that substance left in the stump of the nation, that is called the holy seed. This is way more than just a promise that some people will survive. It's the promise of a sacred lineage that's going to endure through all the devastation.
So what is this holy seed, ultimately? Well, the interpretation here, which gets linked to a similar idea over in Galatians 3:16, is that it's pointing to the Messiah. The promise is that out of this chopped down, seemingly dead nation, that sacred family line leading to Christ would be kept safe, and through him, new life would eventually spring forth for the whole world.
Wow. So we've gone all the way from a prophet who feels totally broken by his own sin to a nation facing complete ruin. And we end up with this incredible promise of a holy seed. And it kind of leaves us with a question that still hits home today. In our own moments of devastation, when everything feels like it's been cut down and is totally hopeless, where do we look for that living substance that holds the promise of renewal?